The term supply and demand was actually originally demand and supply, and it was coined by James Denham Stewart, who is one of the other bright lights of the Scottish Enlightenment. His point of view, for that matter, Smith's point of view, is that it's the requirements of customers that cause the supply side to do whatever they do. I think it goes both ways. That's one reason why I say invention is the mother of necessity and not just the reverse. And that's what we need. We need inventions here that mother of necessity. When industry won the Industrial Revolution, the condition of customer freedom and independence was to some degree lost, and so was worker independence. I mean, if your last name is Cooper or Smith or Farmer, I mean, that says what an ancestor of yours did. My own Searles is actually derived from a Norman word for a soldier.
So that was the voice of Doc Searles. Just to give you some context there, Doc couldn't be here. In fact, we should have had the clip on MyTerms. So Doc is the Chief Intention Officer of Kwaai. It's kind of an honorific title. He's not a board member or an executive, but he's kind of our pet talisman that we roll out. But he initiated the MyTerms project, which is now published as an IEEE standard. And Jaymes Davis is going to talk about the implementation of that standard. So here you go, Jaymes.
All right, there we go. All right. And then what do I push to advance slides? This guy? All right, so I got the general sense of what's happening. Now I'm going to come downstairs because I don't want to fall. All right, so I think I'll start off with something really easy and really key. How I came across this idea and the conversations that were presented is I actually happened to have gone to a movie website looking for a movie. And the movie website was asking me questions that it really didn't need to know the answers to, like, oh, your email and all the pieces that are in play. And so I look a little deeper into it, and it's the consent form, and the consent is asking me, unless you actually looked at it, you didn't know that it's like third-party people who are about to get your data and about to sell your data and about to do 10 different things with your data. And you're like, huh. I don't know if I would have accepted that if I actually read that, but even worse is that it didn't even have a button that says deny all this. I don't want to do it. It only had the button of opt in or opt in. I thought it was broken somehow, but apparently it was not. That was a feature. And so this starts coming across when I started looking at Doc and his MyTerms, and that IEEE 7012, I believe, is the MyTerms piece of it, where I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking to change the way of the relationship, because I think somebody else was asking this question earlier. It's like, how do we make sure that our private information is not sold, or that is or that our knowledge, our cognitive knowledge, isn't uploaded or changed or pushed out differently in one way versus the other? How do we get back our privacy and somewhat our agency, if you will, for what we're actually been looking for in this type of environment or in endeavor? So I'm going to I think I put it in my pocket. So where are we at? We good? So we're actually going to talk a little bit about the video apparently first.
All right, I'm starting here inside the Google Chrome.
Oh, perfect. So this is where we started looking at how the web is broken because we're doing all these consents and we're getting these cookies. And I mean, how many cookies do you think that you get when you go to a website? Right? Some. I literally went to one website and got 43 cookies, right? Just from that way. And they're tracking you and they're knowing where you're doing and how it's working. And not only that, they're selling it to someone else. Has anybody here talked about or known about what's called a device identifier? All right, because the device identifier is the legal thing that they can actually resell that is you, right? They can resell the anonymous nature of you to the degree so much of surveillance pricing. Me and my wife, she has an iPhone, I have an Android phone. Okay, we're at the same house. We both open up Instacart. Her stuff is 8% higher than mine. At multiple times, I can see $2 more for what she's looking at on the grocery chart than I am. And the only reason they know that is the device identifier. And it's all the tracking and all the stuff that's been thrown around by you simply looking for stuff. And so the idea that instead of me accepting what you're telling me, I could present an agreement to you and say, this is what I believe, was something I decided I was going to absolutely make happen, or like Balaji says, collapse reality around that. And it's not just, I'm just thinking this out of the blue. There's multiple different characteristics around this. It's a $4 billion GDPR conversation that's been out there. That's the reason why they started putting all these consents on there and all the people had to start getting in play was GDPR. They at least enabled that there. Those that live here in California, we actually have a California GDPR that is the same type of intent of the right to actually delete my stuff off of there. Right, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But it's the click and fatigue control that I got upset with, that I didn't want to have to deal with consistently. But it became so much more when I understood that you could do so much more. Right, back in the day, it's been a long time for a new trust protocol to come in play, and that's what we've been doing here at Kwaai. So this is a project that we started here at Kwaai off of the different individuals that he was just describing. We actually have a work group channel that you can actually become part of, just to have an understanding that the understanding of consent chain is to create a consent infrastructure. Right? It's to create an infrastructure in which we can leverage the technologies that we know are good, like blockchain as an example. Someone was saying, oh, most of the crypto is frauds and movements. It's like, yeah, but the technology itself is not. The technology itself has a whole bunch of different capabilities that we can leverage, and in this situation, use it as an immutable ledger. So the way this works is that there is a browser extension that I created, and the browser extension has a lot of cool functionalities, and I'll kind of go into those functionalities, but the browser extension creates and looks at the hash. It creates a consent, and it says, okay, this is the consent that you made, and it decides that it's going to put it out on the blockchain in a private way so that the website could read it in that particular same instance, so I don't actually have to choose to hit agree. It actually knows I've agreed or not agreed to certain things automatically. As well as we built this to have a singular focus of reducing the cookie fatigue, right? That's the first step that had to happen before we got to a point where we were able to position our own agreements that were in play. So basically the MyTerms extension, it's a small extension that goes into your browser. It's currently available. We'll put up the repo hub that you can actually download it and get access to it. We want it to be open and free for everybody to start leveraging, because the more people who start leveraging it, the better it becomes as far as delivering on the idea of presenting our own agreeable contracts and movements from this position. Basically, the input is pretty simple. We actually created from another group that was in Kwaai that was working on another trust process, that we implemented a proverb engine that actually helps deliver the idea of the Diffie-Hellman. Some of us who understand that Diffie-Hellman problem, the SSL problem, how many people remember an SSL accelerator or an adapter that used to have to buy for your computer because the computation was too large, and that's what stopped it. So they had to flip it and create a different mathematical way to do that. And so that's what we built with the proverb engine, is that the proverb engine is what communicates and builds a hash and a trust that goes out to the blockchain that the other website can read to know that it's your agreement that you've agreed to from that perspective. And so that's kind of what we built with the MyTerm extensions. And then we've added in some community capability so that we can at least try to get to 95 to 96% of the type of browsers or CMPs that are out there, that it automatically will just suppress automatically. So if you have a OneTrust, and I think we did OneTrust almost 100%, but most of the OneTrusts that are in play, it will automatically deny those by default because you've set it to deny those by default. So you don't even have that cookie pop up anymore. It just knows what you need to actually accomplish. And then as time progresses, we want it to be really, really important to start gathering those things. And so when I first tried this out to go down the path, I thought, okay, I will create a way that it will sense each one and try to figure out each one. And I found just after going to 4 or 5 different sites, they all say different messages. One of them says deny by default. The other one says deny maybe. The other one says opt out possibly. Right? There's just so many different things that they were trying to say that I felt like, oh man, I wish somebody had thought this through. And I ended up, again, another member of Kwaai saw a consentomatic adapter that was being created, and I was able to grab that and actually factor that into our project and built that into the project so that it actually uses the community to continue to understand those particular CMPs that get popped up. So as time progresses, we'll hopefully catch all of them, or at least we're managing it separately and differently from that. So it creates this verification triangle, right? The browser extension understands what's happening when you go to the different sites. It keeps everything within the actual browser itself. It doesn't actually pass any data. There's no information leakage that's actually happening from that perspective. When it actually finishes it, it creates the consent, but it puts out at the blockchain. And so that's the commitment and the consent hash that's in play. And then we've made the other side of the equation. And what do I mean by that specifically? It's that the other side, who are the people who have to worry about GDPR, the ones who are buying the $50,000 OneTrust, the ones that are putting these things in. I mean, you have a place that, you know, they're paying for somebody who doesn't like the way that it's happening, and they're forcing us to actually get involved in it. So what we're doing is we're created a way that they can actually do the same thing. So I created a WordPress a plugin. That WordPress plugin is the first start of it. We're going to create multiple more of that type of enacting. But that WordPress plugin allows for the WordPress website to actually go out and see the agreement I've created using the proverb engine. So if I go to that site, I no longer have to worry about it actually asking me. It actually understands, and it understands the agreement I provided to it, i.e., how about I say I like purple? As people can tell, I like purple and black. Those are the things that I'm willing to let you know. So therefore, if you want to sell me something, it should be in purple and black. That's the type of movement I agree with, and that's the type of thing I'd be okay with you understanding. Like, I don't want everything, I want that, very specifically. When it gets even further, imagine somebody was talking about understanding about the agency. This was another piece that I thought was really important in the aspect that I could become or keep my own fans. Because the agreement that you're putting in play and the way that it's working, imagine if you had a TikTok shop or you're using, Facebook, and you have all these fans that are in play, and one of those, TikToks, gets booted out of the country. You can't use it anymore, right? And if that's the situation, then I lost all my fans that were there. But if you had the ability to create an agreement and your fans had the ability to sign up for your agreement, they'd go anywhere that you went, just like naturally you would want. Yeah, I'd go anywhere. So somebody, I'm watching a fan base, they go to a different group, I'm down to go see that new group, right? So it creates this verification triangle that can get further and further out. Like right now we're talking about, the consents that are happening on the sites. Tomorrow we may be talking about houses that you buy, items that you purchase, could all be based around consent agreements that are built into this environment. So as I said before, the privacy that's preserving, it index locally, it hashes locally, and then it creates a batching process. So if you're familiar with the blockchain and some of the capabilities, unfortunately, that it requires, every now and then it has a gas price, and the gas price might be too high. So we've built in intelligence to understand when it should find the lowest time to send your hash across to actually put that into play. Okay, but here's something that really becomes the big point for all of us in the future, is that as I go to that one website that took a whole bunch of my cookies, or I go to sites that are bad, or imagine I go to a site that currently has been already hacked, and I don't know it's already been hacked. the ability of the consent chain and the agreement that we're putting in gives us the ability to see things that are happening in the actual watchdog, i.e. if the site has an exception, if I went to the exception site and it forced 10 cookies onto me, well, that's not good, and it's an exception, and so therefore it's listed in the chain as this is what they did. And imagine if I could see multiple sites where I saw them doing the wrong things or doing bad things, we'd be able to enforce it a little differently. And so that's kind of the actions that will happen from that perspective. So to understand just the consent chain in general, I think based on my timing, I'm going to fast forward to the video. I know it's 6 minutes and 54 seconds. So, okay. So the understanding around the video, so I'll give you a little preface around the video itself then. What I'm going to show is the consent chain from an end-to-end perspective. And so you'll actually see us look at the actual consent chain dashboard, but more importantly, you'll see the two service consoles that the consent chain builds so that you can actually verify and see kind of the things that are happening when you go to that website. Because, you know, the websites that you go to today, they're all processing directly on your machine. Right? They're no longer this cool HTTP thing that everybody's like, you know, when you actually see what's happening behind the frame, you kind of start getting a sense of an idea of how much is going on that you aren't really privy to, that you should be privy to for what's happening. Right? You wouldn't let somebody come over to your house and stay at your house and have a camera and be recording and seeing what you're doing. That you'd never let that happen. But you're doing it today, and that's the kind of conversation that we want to stop and that we want to push out and prevent. So that's what consent chain's about. Ready for the video? All right, there we go. One more forward. There we go.
All right, I'm starting here inside the Google Chrome, and I already have a consent chain extension loaded. As you can see here, the last batch hash consent and the total number of batches that have been committed. I'll go ahead and open up the dashboard. Consent chain is built on the principles of the IEEE P7012, also known as MyTerms, which establishes the individuals can express their privacy terms as enforceable digital agreements. Instead of just clicking banners, we create verifiable hash consent records that can be independently validated. Okay, so we're going to be on the default timeline. This shows your consent across the web, site by site. If you have any deny by default, enable it to try to deny all the cookies that it can to make sure that it keeps all the copies in the right space. It will even give you a cryptographic proof of what's happened. It shows you the timelines that have been in place. Moving to sites, here you see visit history and exceptions. Exceptions typically means the site sent cookies under a necessarily only classification or similar edge case. Under analysis, you can see some consents over time and website consent frequency. Now it's into agreements. Here you can see actual agreements text that was presented to you. The agreement is hashed and linked to the consent record, meaning you can always prove what you were shown at the time of consent.
Right, they're like, oh, I showed this to you, right? No, you didn't. This is what I saw. This is what I agreed to.
Next is Cookie Monster. This feature categorizes known cookies based on their sites you visited and matches them against a known tracking database. If any known tracking cookies are detected, you can destroy them immediately.
So we now have this community base
then
as
we're
well.
going to go to preferences, where you get to basically set any of your consent preferences right off the bat. All right, so let's go to a live demo. This site that we'll choose, this consent banner passes the detector, but we look at the extension service console, you can see the detected the cookies being sent as the consent handling was done. Now I'm opening up the developer tools. From the console, you can see it found the consent objects. When I open manage preferences, you'll see my default was set to necessary only. Now the cookie banner appears, it's being scored, and its consent is being recorded, as you can see down on the side of the console. So I'm going to save my preferences. Go ahead and close this out. Here you can see my MyTerms scoring. I'm going to jump over to the console. Now I will do a refresh and you'll see that it's added the new increased consent count. Now it's recorded in the timeline. You go to agreements, I can see the captured agreement text from that site. I can read the privacy policy in plain text.
Oh,
exactly
sorry.
what was presented.
You can see the consent of where everybody had a chance to read, but didn't. And then again, you can see the amount of cookies that this thing dropped right off the bat.
That's why verification matters. Okay. Now let's move to the blockchain dashboard.
So just a piece,
note,
if you can have the blockchain or you cannot have the blockchain, it doesn't matter to it. It just keeps it private inside. If you wanted to, we're working on other ways to move the database out externally so you can put it onto a USB key or such for your own privacy.
It batches consent intelligently based on network gas costs, so it avoids writing during peak hours. But I can force batch it here. And if I want immediate commitment, that's it, man. User-defined terms, recorded agreement, tracking detection, cryptographic proof, and optional blockchain on anchoring.
So that's the extension portion of it. Now let's look at the web
today I'm going to show you the full consent chain in action from the user side to the server side and how verification actually works. This is the browser extension. As you can see, I'm going to kind of go and look through the dashboard. I can see different analytics of what I've agreed to.
So I develop all the time in Chasm, so therefore it always is a new machine every time I spin it up.
What are the tracking ones? It also helps determine my privacy score from that particular perspective. I can set my persistence and preferences and save those off. So I'm going to jump back to the timeline real quick, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to.
So I built a web plugin, WordPress plugin for the website.
Taking this,
and it should pop up here. 1 second.
WordPress server that's running, and it will actually have a terms and conditions where I can actually set
GDP so that it does that little piece for it.
I'm going to open up the developer tools, and I'm going to go ahead and show the console of the actual consent chain. You can see it actually generated the hash when I decided to decline the actual consent. And as you can see, it actually went out and verified.
So it did the first verification. So that, since I've already had it, now if I ever came back or if I did anything else, it's already verifies, and it verifies against the actual extension first and sees that it's extension, or if, because it does batching, it can understand if it's in the pending state, but you've already said yes to it. So it's already pending, it's ready to go into the thing, so you're go ahead and be verified. So now from a website's perspective, they didn't have to buy a $50,000 CMP or anything of that nature to get the same consent capabilities, a little bit more actually advanced in what they were getting from just hitting apply and okay. But I've also maintained a level of privacy that they don't actually have agency over me anymore at that perspective. Okay, so that is all I had for my side.